Right, well, this is certainly different. So, as you can tell, I'm not on camera, like, at all. Truth be told, I didn't want to get camera ready, so we're just doing a voiceover thing, I guess. I don't really know. I don't know how this is gonna work out, considering I've never done this before in my life, but, I mean, hopefully it goes well, because if it doesn't, then I'm screwed. Today I'm reading responses from what is the scariest encounter with another human you've ever experienced. So, hopefully this all goes well. Me and my boyfriend came back at like 2 AM from a night out. We were both quite drunk and stumbled into the hallway to the elevator when we see drops of something on the floor. It definitely was blood. Fresh and wet. The elevator button and door were covered in bloody handprints as well. My boyfriend called the elevator, pushing me aside, not knowing what could be in it. Luckily, nothing except for a puddle of blood. The elevator came from the 5th floor, so we went investigating. The trail of blood ended at the door with huge hand smears of blood on the door. It took all our courage to ring, but I'm so glad we did. An elderly man opened the door. He looked straight out of a horror movie, covered in blood from head to toe. His grey sweater was red, his hair was wet, his shoes were filled with blood. We immediately sobered up. I called an ambulance which arrived in 2 minutes. My boyfriend went inside the flat, helping the man sit down. There was so much blood, I have never seen that in my life. We didn't know what happened to him until we met him yesterday properly for the first time. Recognised my boyfriend's glasses. He was drunk, wanted to ride his bike home, crashed somehow and got a huge cut on his head. He takes heart medicine which thins his blood and that's why he lost so much. If we wouldn't have rung the doorbell, he would have bled to death. He actually gifted us money and a super expensive bottle of champagne for something completely self-explanatory. Was walking through campus after a night class, around 9 or 9:30 PM. It's a big campus, in brackets, UCF, and pretty empty at this point. The shuttle I took was at the other end of campus, so it was a pretty long walk. At one point, I'm walking through a swampy area with a raised boardwalk. There are 2 girls a ways ahead of me, walking together. I see them reach the end of the boardwalk and go into the next building. As I reach the end of the boardwalk, this guy kinda hops up out of nowhere / the surrounding woods. Takes my hand, starts telling me how beautiful I am, what's my name, what year am I at uni, what am I doing tonight, where do I live? I ask him why he wants to know and he says, I'm taking a survey. I'm literally in such shock that it takes me a second to realise that he's even touching me / has my hand. Everything he was asking me sounded really unauthentic and like it was scripted, like he was in a rush to get everything out. He also had this really weird, unsettling vibe that he was giving off that instantly freaked me out, but it was dark outside, and I was all alone at this point. Thankfully, a minute or 2 later, a guy walks through the building, and I use that moment to break my hand away from the weirdo and tell him I have to go. I've never walked so fast to my shuttle and looking over my shoulder the whole time. I couldn't stop shaking the whole ride home. Something about that guy was off, and I was sure if that man hadn't come out when he did, that something bad would have happened to me. Exactly what I don't want to think about. Keep in mind there had been a group of 2 girls walking ahead of me and he hadn't approached them. He was looking for a girl by herself. Last year I moved from a dense urban area to a really pretty, underpopulated rural one. I got super into trail running. There's a big circular route that I like a lot in the local nature preserve, and over the summer I was on an early morning run there when I passed a dude sitting on a rock slightly off the trail. He looked exceedingly normal, street clothes, hat, boots, etc. And I figured him for a hiker, all good. So I make my way down the path, around, uphill and to this nice overlook where I usually stop to drink from the fountain. It's when I'm bent over the fountain that I hear a twig snap, and I straighten up to see that guy. Crouched over and stepping through the woods off the clearing like he's trying to creep up on me. I bolted. The sprint back was the most terrifying experience of my life, obviously. I don't know if I lost him or if he gave a chase at all. The police never found anyone matching his description and I don't run anywhere near there anymore. I was 18 and I was coming home after doing a job interview. I finally came up on my street and an older man came out from behind a tree and asked me where a street was. Right away I got creepy vibes from him and said, sorry, I don't know where that is. And as I was crossing the street, he slowly turned around and said in the most creepy way, hey, do you want to hang out? I quickly said no and speed walked to my house, and the whole time I was scared that he saw what house I walked into and that he knew where I lived. This happened when I was about 9 or 10. It was around 8:30 on a Tuesday or a Thursday. My parents and I were watching TV when there was a knock at the door. My dad got up and answered it to see a man standing there with a white van behind him. He looked like he was in his early 30s. My dad went outside to talk to him and I hid behind the TV stand and waited for him to leave. It was hard for me to hear what they were saying, but I could hear my dad say, no thanks, and we're good. When my dad got back inside, I saw the van leave and asked my dad what had happened. The guy had asked him if he could come inside and do a security system estimate because he was a door-to-door salesman. My dad said he could see a bunch of other guys inside the van staring at them. When they left, my mum called the neighbour to ask her what was going on. Apparently they had asked almost everyone on our street the same question. My neighbour called the police and they started to follow the van. The guys caught on, and when my neighbour turned around to go home, they started following her. She eventually lost them, but the whole ordeal was still very scary nonetheless. During a camping trip, we woke up in the middle of the night to rocks hitting the walls of our cabin. They were being thrown at intervals, like once every 10 seconds or so. What's even more strange is that we could hear them making some weird noises too, like they were trying to scare us or something, in brackets, and they sure did. This happened for a couple of minutes until we heard them walking away with their heavy boots. We remained quiet the entire time, never leaving our beds. The next morning we saw pebbles scattered around our cabin. We reported the incident to the local rangers that day but never heard back from them. We still to this day don't know who, what, or why this happened. The pessimistic side of me thinks there was a group of serial killers who were waiting for a response from us to confirm there were people inside the cabin. But I'd like to think that it was just some drunk teens pranking around our campsite. Either way, it was a scary night. I came across this weird guy when I was walking home from school one day. I was either 12 or 13. It was a good 20-30 minute walk home from school, and I'm finally in my neighbourhood on my street. I can see a couple blocks ahead that there's this tall guy walking towards my direction. He's on the opposite side of the street. Then he crossed the street to my side. I stepped into the gutter, yielding him the sidewalk, and then he did the same. I stepped back on the sidewalk, and then a few steps later he did the same. In my mind, I'm freaking out. This guy looked super sketch. I'd half a mind to just turn up the nearest driveway and, in quotes, fumble at my house keys pretending to get inside, but I froze. I stayed on the sidewalk until we were a few steps away, and I sidestepped into the gutter. He just passed me. No words, no motions. At that moment, I just booked it home as fast as I could. At one point, I turned to see if he had turned around and started following me or whatever, and saw that he had stopped and was staring at me. I made it inside, called one of my parents at work to tell them, turned on the TV, which happened to be the local news channel. And here he is. Breaking news. Escaped convict. Called the police and told them what I saw, and they caught him 30 minutes later a few blocks away. I stopped walking and started riding a bike to school. I live in a small town in the countryside of England. It's quite quiet and I've never had anything to worry about here. But last December I was out with my cousin, in brackets, we were both 16, walking back to my house from my grandparents. It was about 7 PM, so due to it being winter, it was really dark. And to get to my house, we had to walk down a small, quiet lane with large bushes on either side. As we were walking up to it, I heard rustling in the bushes right next to me on my right, and looked over and just saw a person crouching there watching us walking along. When they realised that I had seen them, they crouched down even further and crawled into the bushes so I couldn't see them. However, I could still almost feel them watching us walk along. I discreetly motioned to my cousin that there was someone watching us, and we very quickly walked home. I wondered afterwards if we had narrowly avoided a mugging. Scary thing is how close it was to my house. The road was literally 30 seconds away. Right, well, not only am I now scared to ever leave my house again, but I'm also very tired because I'm running on like 4 hours sleep and I need to get this edited by like 4 hours time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then like, comment and subscribe as per usual. You can also follow my Twitter. I'll leave it linked in the description and pop it up somewhere on screen. And yeah, I'll see you guys whenever I next see you.